Good morning, everybody. It's been a while since I've been live in here, not because I've been avoiding it, just because I've been super busy with other stuff. But I do see recurrence of topics coming up over and over again. And although I think people have got the understanding of certain topics, they obviously haven't. Now, there is lots of posts in here on the topics of insulin and carbs and inflammation and cravings, and I have podcasts and probably some blog posts on my webpage too, so there are lots of resources for you, but it's nice to get these refresher videos. Hi Carolyn. So any of you guys that are watching right now, if you do have questions, pop them and hopefully I'll see them, but sometimes with Facebook Live it doesn't let you see questions until at the end of the live, and because I'm doing this on my phone, I don't have like a sidebar. Anyway, I digress. So a lot has been coming up lately about cravings and sugar and the connection, and I of course assume that people get the connection the way I would get it, but they don't, and I get it. It can be a complicated topic as well. We understand that life can be very stressful. We all have a lot on our mind. And when we're having a sugar craving, we're not saying, oh, this must be my insulin response from the carb I had last night or whatever. Like, I get it. And it's part of my job to remind people. But so we'll start very basically. So when we look at sugar is pretty much all carbs except your non-starchy carbs. No matter what way you want to look at it, when sugar goes into the body in whatever form it is, once it gets converted through the liver and then absorbed up through the intestines, it is sugar, regardless of if it came from fruit, if it came from a sweet potato, if it came from a chocolate bar, it still comes out as sugar at the end of the day. So when we consume that sugar, we then get a response from all these different parts of our body. And the main responses usually come from the pancreas and the liver in regards to insulin. So insulin will then come along and tell the body, this is what we need to do with this food or this nutrient. So insulin pretty much is the dictator and tells the body what happens. And in some cases, the body stops listening to the dictator. When we look at sugar is our most primal fuel. No matter what way you want to look at it, sugar is our most primal fuel. It is the body's preferred fuel because it's the easiest fuel to break down and utilize and the fastest one to do. So if you are in some sort of big mad survival state, the body is going to break down, say, the honey way before it breaks down the macadamia nuts. And that's just how it is. Because it's a simple carb, that means we can break it down really quick. So the body prefers to use sugar, especially in this day and age, because we are constantly in somewhat of a survival state. So when we understand that the body prefers sugar, and will always kind of go towards sugar unless you're metabolically flexible, and unless you have a lot of good discipline as well, and the body performs well on fat for fuel, your body will drive you to look for sugar. And a lot of these hormones, they're out of your control. So in a way, you kind of have to take this outside look at your body and think that you're not always in control, because when this cascade of hormones does get released from your body's going to tell you to look for sugar whether you want it to or not. Anyway, so sugar is our most primal fuel. It's the easiest fuel for the body to use, and it does cause a cascade of hormonal ripple effect, shall we say. So when the body is in a state of fatigue, or you didn't have a good sleep, or you're in a state of stress, you get this release of chemicals that say, hey, we are in a stress state and we need an easy source of fuel to burn. what is the easiest source? It's going to be the sugar. So it's going to then drive up this cascade of hormones that causes your body to then look for sugar. So your brain is saying, hey, I know you have that sugar over there in the corner, or you have that cookie hidden up there in the press. Although you don't want to get it, the hormones and the pressure builds up so much that you're going to go for that. Now, when you do eventually give in to sugar cravings, or not even sugar cravings, when you have some sugar, we also get a ripple effect. When we consume sugar, it signals, or any sort of carbs, it signals to the body, to the intestines, to make serotonin. And serotonin is our feel-good hormone. That's why we love carbs. That's why we really enjoy carbs, because they make us feel all good. Although we might regret it a few minutes later or an hour later, for that time frame, carbs make us feel really good because they cause us to produce the extra feel-good hormone that is serotonin. And carbs do taste good. We know they taste good. Nobody can deny that carbs don't taste good. And again, it is because of that hormone connection. Another hormone that gets released when we ingest carbs is called dopamine. Dopamine and serotonin, especially dopamine, they're very addictive hormones, like adrenaline would be. They can be very addictive for the brain. That's why if you constantly eat a lot of sugar all the time, you can become very addicted, because your body gets addicted to the sensation or the hormones that these foods give to you. So it's understandable that when someone eats carbs, they want to eat more carbs, because as the hormones start to drop, the serotonin and the dopamine starts to drop, of course your body wants to bring it back up again so that you can feel good again. So that's one aspect of it, that we do get those releases of hormones, and if you're constantly getting that, the more you're going to be addicted to it. Now, there is going to be an aspect of willpower as well involved there, and that's just how it is. There is an aspect of willpower, but when we look at the biochemical reaction, that's what happens. Now, when we ingest the carbs as well, we also get a release of, like I said a few minutes ago, that insulin. So insulin tells the carbs where they need to go. Now, when we get the spike of insulin, so your insulin comes up on a graph, so you ingest oatmeal, whole grain toast, Snickers, and you get this big spike of insulin, the insulin is going to come down. That is just the law of physics. What goes up must come down, and the insulin will come down, and the faster it comes down, the more of a crash you're going to get, and in a rebound effect, you're going to get more cravings for sugar, because as the insulin starts to come down, it pulls down your blood sugars as well, and then your body goes into a survival state or a panic state, and it's like, oh shit, our blood sugars are dropping so low, I need to get this back up again. What's the easiest way to get back up? It is going to be sugars or carbs. So you're caught in this vicious loop. So then you might have some sugar, and the worst thing you would do with that would be, apart from add fats, I'll come back to that, but add some caffeine as well. So you get the sugar and you get the caffeine spike. So you get insulin and cortisol up, so you get two big spikes, and then you come back down again, and then you go back up. So you're constantly getting this reflux in hormones, and you're caught in this vicious cycle. And that's why we can see when people try to break this cycle and train the body to be metabolically flexible, there can be some kickback, there can be some pushback. It can be uncomfortable for some people more so than others, but when you get past that point, boy, is it wonderful. Because when you become metabolically flexible, you're taking your body out of a state of being purely dependent on sugar for fuel, and now it can switch over when sugar is not present and burn fat for fuel instead, without saying, oh fuck, what's going on? So when you want to become metabolically flexible, you're taking away that panic instance where the body has no problem of switching from fat to sugar and so on without panicking at all. Oh, Deb, I'm sorry you can't watch this, but I'm going to save it, and I might, if my phone allows me, upload it to YouTube as well. So you're caught in this vicious cycle. So you got the insulin coming up, you got the insulin coming down, which pulls the blood sugars down, which then causes your body as a second person, or your brain, to say, oh shit, we're about to die, let's get the blood sugars and energy back up. So then that drives your cravings up, so you go off and get them again. Okay, so that's one. Then you got this cycle that every time you have the carbs, the yummy carbs, you're like, oh, I feel so good, I'm so happy, carbs make me just feel amazing. So you're stuck then in that serotonin dopamine loop, which goes straight to the brain, makes you feel great. Then that drops down, then you need it again, and then it drops, and again. So you've got all these different hormonal cycles, and if you were to stack those two cycles on top of each other, it's very hard to break something like that, but it can be broken. It definitely can be broken. And one of the easiest ways to break a cycle like that is to go sleep, which is bizarre for some people to think of. But when you go asleep, you pretty much set this reset button in your body, which resets everything, but especially the hormone known as leptin. When we reset the hormone leptin, we break the cycle of cravings. You ever have a craving like at nighttime of popcorn and chips and cookies? And then if you fight the craving, if you just like, no, I've got my goals and all that, and you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, you do not wake up craving popcorn and chips and cookies. Or at least I hope you don't, but you shouldn't, because when we sleep, it resets that leptin hormone, so you can break the cycle there. But again, there is an element of discipline in some people, because breaking the cycle can be harder for some people than it can be in other. So that would then bring in the emotional eating aspect for a start. One of the biggest things when we look at emotional eating is, are you unhappy? Are you unfulfilled? Those are the biggest things, like where is your heart aching that you're trying to fill the hole with food. And if that's not you, if that emotional aspect is not you, then we're back to that hormonal cycle, that you're stuck in this loop. And this loop can be strong enough that you say, fuck it, I'll be grand for a week, like not a big deal. I want Deb the popcorn more than I want my goals. Like, so that loop can be very strong. In breaking that loop can be quite challenging. But this, when I look at my clients as well, what I see is not only are they stuck in this loop, this two-tiered loop of the insulin, glucose, and then the dopamine, serotonin. Not only are they stuck in that loop, they also are stuck in sometimes a complacency loop, where they've done so well for so long and the weight came off so easy that they're like, oh, I know what to do. This is easy. I can get this off. And I say it too. I say it all the time. But I will say I'm in a different boat. This is what I do, and I know how to get it off. But with clients, they can get complacent. So not only have they got the hormonal stack going on, now they're complacent. They're like, oh, a few days won't hurt. I know how to get this weight off, or I'll get it off next week. And before you know it, the cycle keeps going on. And before you know it, you're 20 pounds up, 25 pounds up. It's one of those things that you need to kind of nip in the butt before it gets out of hand. But when you look at cravings, this should help you understand that not only are you fighting the willpower discipline aspect, but behind that kind of wall of willpower and discipline, you have this hormonal cycle. So hormonal cycle that is out of your control somewhat until you kind of snap out of it. You go asleep, maybe you fast, maybe you take a shot of apple cider vinegar, maybe you say, no, I gotta stop this. But then again, behind that further wall, there could also be that emotional aspect where you're unhappy, your heart aches, you're not fulfilled, you're stressed, something like that. So you have all these different layers. So we have these tiers and also these layers. So it is a complicated system. And then if you also throw in poor sleep, and like I said, stress, overwhelm, a weakened immune system, gut issues will drive up in cravings and insulin resistance. So, and I've done posts on this, but a lot of bad bugs, so bad bacteria, hi Tanya, bad bacteria, you know this, or I think you know this, most people might know this, is that bad bacteria, they thrive on sugar. So most people know that Candida loves sugar. Well, the same is said for bad bacteria. Bad bacteria loves sugar. So if you have a gut that is dominated by bad bacteria, and bad bacteria is the bacteria that we would call the bacteria that makes you fat and sick, and they say ugly as in poor skin, poor hair and all that, and they fall into a phylum of bacteria called firmicutes. If your gut is dominant in firmicutes but not dominant in the good bacteria, then you're going to have higher cravings, and that pushback is going to be a little bit harder for you, because not only have you the hormonal cycle, you've then got the bacteria saying, feed me, Seymour, and they want loads of sugar. I know that wasn't funny, but I always think of Little Shop of Horrors when I say feed me. Anyway, so they're then driving you for more sugar as well. So you have this big battle going on all the time with the hormones and everything. Then there is that other caveat of inflammation as well. So if there's a lot of inflammation in the body, it usually is a signal to us that there is an element of insulin resistance going on there, that your body is somewhat addicted to sugar. Talk and walk. Oh, hey, Natalie, I'm talking and walking and listening to you. I'm glad you're listening. Sorry, I was shaking my head because I get distracted easily. I'm like squirrel all the time. Anyway, so if you have inflammation in the body, there is a sign that inflammation shows that your body is addicted to sugar and that the cells are running mostly off glucose, and that this is another cycle that you're stuck in, because insulin drives up inflammation drives up insulin, and so on and so on. So there is that state as well. So really you want to look at resetting the body, look at the aspect of discipline, willpower, do look at the aspect of the emotional eating. For my clients, definitely look at the aspect of complacency. So you know who you are, you've done so well, and then you have a week where you're like, fuck off. Is inflammation and an injury inflammation the same response? Well, so that's a good question, Gillian. So first off, you always remember, you cannot have pain in the body without inflammation. You can't. So if you are like me, and every time you walk into the gym, you hit your leg off something, and then you get a big bruise and it's sore, that's inflammation. And that's an external inflammation. It's being caused by an external factor. But when we look at the internal inflammation, which in some people does cause a lot of pain, and in some people it doesn't, that internal inflammation can be caused by the body again being on fire, because inflammation in Latin means to set a fire. So the body is on fire. So when you bang your leg, you get a bruise, it's sore, you've got that inflammation under that layer of skin, you're on fire. When you look at the internal inflammation, where the body's internally on fire, what is stoking that fire? What is making that fire even worse? So inflammation, in my head when I pause, I'm trying to break it down simply so that you understand and it's not too complicated. Inflammation is where the cells are on fire and the cells have swollen. So then we look inside the cell. Okay, what's causing the cell to swell? If it comes down to toxins and sugar and trans fats and poor quality foods, we look, okay, they're gone into the cell. On many levels, they start affecting the mitochondria through a state of pushing poor quality water and toxins into the mitochondria cycle. When they get pushed into the mitochondria cycle, then they slow down how the spindles turn, so how your wheels turn, and the slower they start to turn and gunk and stuff gets pushed into them, it causes the cell to slow down and not function properly. Then when we look at the insulin coming into the cell, insulin tears apart mitochondria by a process of ceramide buildup. So ceramide is this inflammatory fat molecule, and when it gets too high, then that then causes the mitochondria to break up. It causes the cell to swell, and then you get all this inflammation, and then you get the ripple effect throughout the cells. So I know a bit of a long-winded answer there. It's the same underlying concept, but different driving factors, Jillian. So one is an external driver and one is an internal driver, per se. But both can cause a craving response, Jillian. Both can cause a craving response. If you hurt yourself in an aid for in a way for your body to try heal itself, it can drive up sugar cravings because it wants to make you feel safe in that safe place again. So if you broke a leg or something, your cravings can be increased because your body wants to make you feel safe, but you're probably somewhat feeling sorry for yourself as well and saying, well, I broke my leg, it's okay, I'll just have some extra carbs because when I'm better, I'll fix it. How many of you have said, I'm having a bad week, I'm just going to be kind to myself and have the treats that I want, and when I'm better, I'll get back on track? Like, how many people have said that? The truth is, things never really get as better as we hope that they're going to get. There's always going to be some sort of stress. There's always going to be those sleepless nights that you don't expect them. I had a sleepless night last night, but luckily today is my refeed day. So if my brain says you need carbs for energy, then that's okay. I need carbs for energy and I can have them. There's always going to be an element of something in your life. Nothing is ever as perfect or as happy as we want it to be in our head. Nothing is. But then if we get into this vicious loop of saying, oh, like I just am not feeling myself, or this external stress or bill is stressing me out, once this is taken care of and I'm feeling better, then I'll get back on track. And that usually never happens. Usually you need someone to come in, like a health coach or someone you're working with, to give you a kick up the ass, say, snap out your shit, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to get things back on track. Jillian, I'm glad you didn't break anything. And does that answer your questions on a biochemical level about insulin and sugar and cravings? The emotional aspect is there, but that would be a whole different video. And sometimes I think people are sick of hearing that they're an emotional eater. Sometimes I think if you can understand the science and hey, there might be a biochemical reaction going on here, that if I'm aware of it and I understand it, then I can take control of it. And sometimes I feel that is more helpful than people just saying, I'm an emotional eater and I'm unhappy, so I'm eating lots of chocolate or whatever it is. So I hope that makes sense. But once you do start that sugar cycle, so I see this with, not to make this video too long-winded, but I'll wrap it up like this. Some of my newer clients, when they do a refeed day, they'll struggle to get back on track after refeed day because they've given their body a lot of sugar and now the body is looking for more sugar. Ooh, I've had it tasted this sugar. It tastes so good. I'm now craving this sugar. I want that feel-good hormone. Yum, yum, like I want more. So then the next day they might struggle to get back on track because the cravings are higher because you've introduced the sugar again. And that's where the element of discipline comes in and having a plan. Okay, I'm going to make sure I get a good night's sleep. I'm going to maybe make sure I take some magnesium before bed to help with the cravings. I'm going to have lots of water. And the next day, maybe I'm going to fast a little longer. You're going to have a plan. This brings you back to where it's important to work with someone. But clearly there's a lot to be taken into consideration. When you have sugar, you can then naturally cause that cascade of hormones and insulin response. They'll get spiked, and then as they start to drop, you're going to crave more. They get spiked and dropped and spiked, and you get stuck in that vicious cycle. So I'm not saying don't have sugar, because sugar is important. It is for some people, it's an essential, especially thyroid conditions. We know the studies are there that when our carb load drops really low, or our glucose load inside the body, the thyroid will slow down and you stop producing enough thyroid hormone. You'll even see after a few days, the metabolism will slow down. It's about 4 days, so don't panic if you're not having low carbs for one day. So carbs are important. It's just you have to understand them and mitigate them, and there's the element of that discipline. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to complicate things too much. I do have an insulin podcast, Insulin 101, which just explains how the liver and the muscles and the brain become insulin resistant. Go check out that. This group I use as my library. Also, I kind of use it as my brain dump. If you haven't noticed, when something pops into my brain, I'll post it real quick so I don't forget. But you can search keywords. You search insulin, you search sugar, search cravings. I have hacks in here on how to hack cravings with certain supplements, cinnamon, apple cider vinegar, magnesium, potassium even, really clean water, good sleep. So there's a lot you can do. Otherwise, have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions and I'll reply to them when I see them. But yeah, have a great day. Enjoy the sun. Bye-bye.